Welcome, folks. We will start in a minute. Allow more people to enter the webinar. Just be advised, we are recording this event. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll start in a couple of minutes. It is wonderful to see you all. I see a bunch of very familiar names over there. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh my God. Names from the past. That is awesome. This is great. We'll start in a minute. I'll introduce the speaker. I'm going to try to provide some kind of opening remarks. We're going to do it properly, officially. Alrighty, I see more people have joined. I'll give it another minute or two. Again, we're kind of Middle Eastern, Midwest, Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic time. But be advised, we are recording this webinar. Alrighty, one more minute, and then we'll start this event tonight. Oh, this is fantastic. I see a couple of very familiar names. This is awesome. Always heartwarming to see that. For those who just joined, we'll start in a minute, just less than a minute, actually. Alrighty, folks, we're officially on. First of all, once again, I'd like to inform you that we are recording this special webinar. My name is Eli Saltzman. I'm an associate research professor of Israel Studies and the director of the Gildenhorn Institute for Israel Studies at the University of Maryland at College Park. I'd like to express, as always, my gratitude to Avis Koyman and Srusti Soresh for all their assistance behind the scenes that make this and all other events, online or in person, possible. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today for a special webinar titled Israeli Culture and Art in the Shadow of Conflict, featuring Dr. Weiss, whom I'll introduce in a moment. I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity and share with you that our next webinar is actually a book talk titled Collapse, the Israeli Labor Party 1992-2024, featuring Dr. Uri Veltman. It will take place online on Tuesday, December 9th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. For more information and to register, please visit www.israelstudies.umd.edu. Alrighty. Israeli culture, from literature and music to visual and performing arts, has always been a mirror reflecting the country's complex history and diverse society. At the same time, it is shaped by ongoing challenges, including political tensions at home and abroad, and the realities of conflict. Today, we gather to explore how artists, writers, creators respond to these circumstances, not only to document or critique, but also to imagine, inspire, and even transform in the aftermath of the horrific attack of October 7th, 2023. Israeli writers, musicians, and performers navigate this very complex terrain daily since October 7th, 2023, and their work captures the intensity of living under threat or in the aftermath of violence, while also asserting life, identity, creativity in the face of adversity. From literature to film to visual arts and performance, Israeli culture demonstrates how artistic expression is both shaped by conflict, but also capable of shaping how society remembers, heals, and moves forward. Today's talk will explore the intersection of art, culture, and conflict, offering insights into how creativity continues to flourish even in the most challenging circumstances. As we begin our conversation, I encourage you to engage with these ideas openly. Consider how culture can serve as both a mirror, but also as a guide, how it can testify to hardship while also inspiring resilience and hope. Art is not merely a response to conflict, in other words. It is a vital part of imagining life beyond it. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Weiss, who's an assistant professor at the Center for Integrative Studies in the Arts and Humanities and is a core faculty member of the Michael and Elaine Serling Institute for Jewish Studies and Modern Israel at Michigan State University. She teaches classes on Israeli culture, world literature, and cinema. Weiss is co-editor of Tracing Typographies, Revisiting the Concentration Camps 70 Years After the Liberation of Auschwitz, and Israeli Culture and Emergency Routine, Normalizing Stress. Her current project explores the interplay between the location of marginalized characters and narrative empathy. As always in our event, Dr. Weiss will speak for about 35 minutes or so, and then we will open the floor for Q&A that I will moderate. Please type your questions at the bottom of the screen in the Q&A designated box. Without further ado, Dr. Weiss, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Zoltman, for your kind introduction. Thank you for inviting me to talk, and thank you everyone for attending today. I will now share a PowerPoint, which hopefully you can all now see. So over the years teaching about Israeli culture, I always say to my students that the goal of my work is to offer a porthole into Israeli culture and go beyond what they might come across on the news or on social media. And I offer this talk today, likewise, as an invitation to enter a conversation about Israeli culture. Now, the Israeli art and literature response to the October 7th, 2023 attack and the ensuing war in Gaza has yielded numerous documentaries, films, television series, memoirs, fiction, and poetry that grapple with the contemporary concerns. And this talk offers a snapshot of the cultural moment and a window into the current Israeli artistic landscape. Now, while we will focus on responses to the October 7th attack, it is very important to me to remind everyone that the conflict has been ongoing for years, and the trauma has been represented in Israeli culture throughout the years. Now, in January, as we heard, in January 2024, my colleagues Irit Ronen, Avner Dinur, and I saw the publication of our co-edited book titled Israeli Culture and Emergency Routine, Normalizing Stress. And this book explores the way Israeli emergency routine, quote unquote, leads to perpetual stress and trauma. The book explores how these conditions are overwhelmingly present in the cultural production of Israeli art and literature. And so the 9 chapters of the book engage with a variety of Israeli cultural artifacts, including poetry, prose, film, graphic novels, and we cast a wide temporal net reaching from as early as the 1960s to 2019. Now, I would like to note that while published just after the October 7th attack, the book is not a reaction to the October 7th attack. And we started working on this book project in 2018 when Israel was under another quote unquote round of rocket attacks from Gaza. And my colleagues at Superior College and I joined a group that aimed at sharing research and supporting each other. As we shared our work and supported each other, we tried to figure out how to carry on, how to continue under constant rocket launches. And then a tentative idea of a special issue was formed. And then the project got delayed. And then COVID hit the world and slowed us down. And as I said elsewhere, anyone who knows anything about academic publishing and co-edited books knows that it's a special kind of cat herding. And so the book took us 5 years. Now, the final edits for this book were on October 5th, 2023. Now, I would not remember the date of the final edits of a book if it weren't 2 days before October 7th. And then when October 7th hit us, we reached out to the press, who were fantastic, and let us insert a dedication. And I want to share the dedication. Quote, "This book is dedicated to all the people impacted by the October 2023 attacks, including our friends and loved ones who contributed to the making of this book. We hope for the end of the cycle of violence and for a better future." End quote. Now, we also had to revise the acknowledgement because Yasmin Zohar, who was a colleague and friend, was murdered on October 7th, along with her husband and two daughters. Now, as I said, Israeli artistic reaction to the attack and war is immense. Um, and so today's talk will begin with a brief overview of literature and television and films. And then we will explore Yahav Winner's short film, The Boy. Now, this short film was published on June 2023. It is set in the Gaza envelope, and it is an absolutely haunting prelude to the events of the October 7th attack. And then we will talk about The Day After, which is a collection of short stories and visual works that imagine Israeli life in the wake of horror. I had previously explored this work in other settings, and I will elaborate upon this further here. Now, both works explore themes of trauma and resilience, which I argue are the most prominent themes in Israeli culture today. And by tracing a range of artistic responses, this talk calls for a broader conversation about how Israeli culture processes and reaffirms collective experience in times of conflict, insecurity, and loss. Now, the body of literary work following the October 7th is already immense. And I will only offer a very brief overview. So the Israeli National Library report for 2024 reports 548 books about the October 7th attack and ensuing war. There are mostly testimonials, books that explore social issues. There is some prose and poetry. There is children literature, which I find very important. I think it's very important for us to notice how these moments are discussed with children, and we'll talk about that. Many books include testimonies of survivors. For example, Akufim, which is a collection of testimonies from the survivors. Also, the fact that over 150,000 Israelis were displaced in Israel is addressed, for example, in Akurim, which means displaced, edited by Kamal Mosela. The depiction of heroism during and after the attack is explored in many of the texts. For example, in Yoav Limor's Giborim Levad Mul Hamas, Heroes Alone Facing Hamas. There is already prose about the attack and war. For example, Hatachana Ktana in Yoman Lo Heroi by Dor Mishani, the small picture, an unheroic journal, and also Herzberg by Ram Gilboa. And we can talk more about them in the Q&A, but arguably currently the most famous book about the October 7th attack is Hostage by Eli Sharbi. So Eli Sharbi was taken on October 7th and was released on February 8th, 2025 after 491 days. And this book was published in June 2025 and sold over 100,000 copies in Israel. So I don't know what you make of this number. In Israeli context, it's a huge number of copies. It has already been translated into English, and a week after its publication on October in English and October 7th, 2025, it was fourth on the Times bestseller list. And it is currently included in the Times list of 100 texts that one should read. And we can talk more about that later. So after the October 7th, Israel was in shock and grief. And everywhere you went, there were these giant posters that said, "Together we will win, Yachad Ninatzeach." Now, this arguably was meant to bridge over the rifts inside Israeli society, specifically in the context of the judiciary overall and the protests against the process, but also more broadly between religious and secular Jews, as well as between Jewish and non-Jewish Israelis. And some of the literature that was published right after the attack reflects this idea of bringing people together in light of threat from outside the country. So just briefly, I said that I find it important to note how children's literature addresses this. So one reflection of this idea of unity and strength might be found in a children's book called The Wonder Hand 15, Together We Will Win. So this book is part of the Wonder Hand series, which includes 15 books and explores a variety of social issues, including disabilities and social acceptability and rejection. And again, we can talk more about, I'm very happy to talk more about this book later in the Q&A, but literature is not the only medium that reflects Israeli concerns. And the October 7th attack has been constantly on Israeli television. If it wasn't news about the hostages or the war, it was a documentary about one and the other. And again, I will only briefly mention a couple of television shows about the attack. So one show that I want to mention is called Slicha L'She'ela, which is the Israeli version of You Can't Ask That. And the television series invites people to answer questions about taboo topics, such as marginalized people and social concerns. And the episode dedicated to the rescued hostages addressed questions regarding trauma and resilience. So for example, one of the participants said, hearing Arabic is triggering. And another participant said, my daughter is now more fearful of men in general. But another participant that said that actually I moved on and I can now eat at a restaurant in Jaffa, so doesn't mind hearing Arabic. Another television series that I want to very briefly talk about is as a 95% Heaven, but so a documentary made by Karim Kenan. So just briefly to explain, 95% Heaven is a phrase that used to be used very frequently by the residents of the Gaza envelope. It features in the book that I mentioned earlier that we co-edited. So people in the Gaza envelope used to say that living in the Gaza envelope is 95% heaven, 5% hell, referring to the ongoing conflict. So the three-part documentary follows Kfar Aza, which is a kibbutz that was under attack from the day of the attack till the last living hostages return. Now, the show is rated 14 plus and includes some very difficult to watch footages. The first part, called Destruction, outlines the history of the kibbutz, including the ongoing years of continuous attack and the fact that they were normalizing the stress. Quote, giving the kids tziplex like akamon, one of the participants says. The second part, titled Time to Rise, follows the survivors' work organizing the fight to bring the hostages back and form new social and political movements. Now, in one of the footages, one of the survivors speaks to the reporters saying that she still believes in that word peace. And then another kibbutz member says that she's really upset, saying, how can there be peace with Hamas? The third part, titled Home, depicts the attempts to move on, including in a heart-wrenching moment. For example, one of the girls whose fiance saved her by literally jumping on the grenade while they were in shelter, asking if she might change her Facebook profile, which includes him. Israeli cinema also already addresses both topics, both the attack and the war, with numerous films, and we don't have time to address all of them. I will just mention one of them, for example, We Will Dance Again, which follows the Nova Festival survivors. And here again, the film includes very difficult footage that I know that it was difficult for me to watch, and I know a lot of Israelis that still cannot watch the film. Okay, before moving on to discuss the short film and the boy and the booklet, I want to very briefly mention Israeli theater reaction to the attack and the war. So, written 10 days after the October 7th massacre, Israeli playwright Maya Aradia Sour's How to Remain a Humanist After a Massacre in 17 Steps captures the trauma and dilemmas of a woman, a mother, and a writer whose world and worldview have been shattered. Yassour's work has been produced in theaters in Europe, Israel, and the US, and I warmly recommend reading the text. It is available online. I want to share the first two and the last two steps. Step one, I'm quoting from the text. Step one, turn the TV off. Switch off all media and every social network designed to radicalize your feeling out of capitalist motives. Do not open videos that your friends sent you privately. If they sent something that shocked their soul, they were not your friends to begin with. If you've seen some extremely graphic footage of women being raped, elderly women being abducted or burnt bodies, you will collapse internally, but you must remind yourself there are mothers on the other side of the fence as well. Step two, keep up to date. Ignorance is not a humanist principle, and there is no point in pretending that inhumane things don't happen every day. Every budding humanist knows the world is not a candy store. Expand your knowledge, read, listen, but only to non-visual media. War porn tickles the goddess of vengeance in her armpits, in her feet, and in her curves. And from there, the road to stop being a humanist is very short. I'm going to jump to step 16. And in any case, and whatever happens, memorize. Write yourself a note on the fridge. Write with a pen in a diary, with lipstick in a mirror, with paint spray on a wall in the street. The simple truth, there are mothers like you across the fence as well. Step 17. Good luck. As I said, the play is a powerful contemplation about humanity and humanism, and I warmly recommend reading it or viewing it if you get the chance. As I said at the beginning, it is important to me to remind us all that while October 7th was a terrifying Zazora, for those of us who were listening to the artists, the warning signs were all sounding, all the alarms and sirens well before. And one of the most haunting moments in this episode of Israel and Israeli art in the October 7th attack and war is the film The Boy, which is, like I said, a haunting prelude to the events of October 7th. So the film follows Avinoam and Barak, father and son from a kibbutz bordering the Gaza Strip, as they are forced to deal with another quote-unquote round of rockets and combat, each in their own way. Now, the filmmaker, Yav Winer, was murdered by Hamas terrorists on October 7th during the October 7th massacre while attempting to stall them in order to allow his wife, Shaili Atari, to escape with their newborn daughter, Shaya. We here at Michigan State University, we had Shaili Atari as our guest. She's a fantastic speaker, and if you get the opportunity either to see her or invite her to speak, I warmly recommend. The film is available via various platforms, including on YouTube, and I recommend viewing it. I will not screen the entire film. I want to take a few minutes to discuss a couple of scenes. So I want to discuss the opening scene, and I am going to share this with you. panoramic view of Gaza from Israel shows the farmland and the urban space in the background, and the road, which seems to lead straight into Gaza, functions as a spatial metaphor for the inevitability of the need to address the conflict. And at first, the silence is haunting, and then the silence is disrupted by the sound of the muezzin call for prayer, and then the gushing water. And it takes the viewers a while to see the burst pipe, and the eruption of water looks like a gushing wound. And then the military jeep passes the gushing water, heading towards the Gaza Strip. And again, this spatial metaphor of the wound suggests a foreshadowing of the eruption of violence. And moreover, the film as a whole is a haunting foreshadowing of the violence yet to erupt, as throughout the film, the boy constantly walk along the fence, which is so easily torn down. And the film outlines the life of an Israeli family living on the border with Gaza and their attempt to cope with the continual rocket attacks from Gaza, followed by retaliation of the Israeli Air Force. And the boy, Barak, struggles with mental concerns that appear to be a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. And he refuses to accept the emergency routine, which includes constant running for shelter during each quote unquote round of rocket attacks from Gaza. And so, for example, we see a scene, and this scene takes place in the kibbutz dining hall right after Avinom, the father, and Barak, the son, fixed this broken pipe. Let me show you this scene. Bear with me just one moment.
מה שלומך?
בסדר.
יופי.
צריך עוד לחזור לעבוד.
נו, ו?
עושה אותי עייף.
אז תנוח אחר כך. תיקח כבר את הכדור, מה יש לך?
לא רוצה. מה נשמע?
בסדר גמור.
תיקנתם?
חיובי.
יופי. מה שלומכם?
רעבים.
שיהיה בתיאבון.
תודה, גם לך.
מה שלומך, ילד?
בסדר.
העבודה בשדה עושה טוב, אה?
כן.
יופי. טוב. יום טוב.
מה הוא רצה?
חוץ. שולחן, ברק, תיכנס כבר, די.
The impact of the continual stress is evident, and one might also note that the older kibbutz member who does not run for shelter, and we can discuss this further. So Barak refuses to normalize the stress, and in a later scene, he insists on watching the news of what is happening across the fence while his family seeks the comfort of a reality show. And I wanted to very briefly show you that scene.
Dr. Weiss, can you enlarge the screen by any chance so people can see the smaller font? Is that possible?
Enlarge the screen so people I can try. Is that better?
Yeah. Let's try and see. Thank you so much.
In a tweet, he says the people in Gaza are...
אמא התחיל.
מה אתה עושה?
יש לי אין כוח לחרא שלך. אמא ברק שוב משוגע.
You say people in Gaza are terrified. Just describe what it is like on the ground.
Good afternoon to you from Gaza, Becky, and thank you
ברק,
for reaching out.
הרוב רוצים לראות נינג'ה.
The military
אבינועם?
ברק.
continue through the day. It really feels at times
רק
like
תביא את השלט.
being pounded to the ground. I saw myself.
So the film outlines this tension between empathy, his empathy, and the family's attempts at resilience. And empathy, as the ability to understand the other, pertains to putting yourself in another's place. And one usually associates positive attributions to empathy. However, as shown by Casey Comstock and Judith Follett, overexposure to horrific information and images might lead to secondary traumatic stress, and overcoming trauma might require avoidance. Thus, empathy might seem to curtail resilience. This tension between, as I said, empathy and resilience is arguably the main tension explored in Israeli culture. And the final example that I want to show exploring this is in the day after booklet. So, as I mentioned earlier, in the days after the October 7th attack, Israelis exhibited extraordinary resilience, helped and support each other, everyone in their own way. So we hear extraordinary stories of people who took their private car, and drove down into the horror to help rescue people. People did everything that they can, anything from driving to rescue people to shipping fruit and vegetable. And one of the things that happened is Or Menaged, a student at the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design, created a Hamal Iyu, which would translate as illustration headquarters, though the word Hamal, the headquarters in Hebrew, is war room. So a war room for illustrations where they produced booklets and coloring booklets for kids, trying to help them deal with the situation. And another project that came out of this initiative is the Day After booklet that combines 10 texts and illustration. And the prompt was simply, quote, imagine the day after. And the connections between the text and images were made later by the editors Or Menaged and Rinda Jean Baruch after the artists submitted their works. So I want to talk a little bit about the first story, which is called Children's Story by Shimon Adaf. Shimon Adaf is a very famous Israeli poet, author. We can talk more about his work. And it is placed next to Asaf Klein's Exiliastes 1:9. And there is so much to explore in Klein's image, and I'm very happy to revisit the image in the Q&A. But for now, I'm going to focus on the story. So the story commences thus, and this is my translation. Apologies, Shimon Adaf, if I don't do your work justice. Quote, when they returned to Sderot, the TV screen was in its place, and her bed with the colorful caterpillar pillows, and the princess bedding in its place, and the wardrobe and the dresser and the jewelry chest in their place. Even the little bookshelf was in its place, and upon it was the book which her uncle had given her for her birthday, even though she warned him not to give her a book, and some book with a long title, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. One page was enough for her, a disgusting book, a boy's book. The cover was beautiful, and she placed it facing the room like decoration, end quote. So the story outlines this little girl's return to Sderot, and the readers know what she had escaped on October 7th and to what reality she is returning. And the dissonance between the seemingly mundane setting, the bed, the shelf, and the horror of the October 7th attack and ensuing war is palpable. And then the choice of Jules Verne's speculative fiction underscores the gap further as soon the girl enters another realm, yet it's not Jules Verne's adventure that she finds, not directly through the book, but rather another disturbing alternative underwater is revealed through a crack on the opposite wall. So the crack, we are told, is the result of a rock that demolished her neighbor's house. And as the girl taps the crack to see if any plaster will come off, a green aura is emitted from the crack. And as she leans closer to examine it, an underwater world full of coral and algae is revealed. And the girl examines this new world and she sees a submarine at the bottom with, quote, human faces, old and young, pressed against the tiny windows, end quote. And in the following days, she follows the visions, watching as a glass dome is hurriedly built and submarine population is rushed into it. And then several others are built and more tiny people are guided into the domed fluorescent cities. And after a week, a dark spot is fired from the underworld land, and which we soon find out is, quote, a tiny boy in a seashell helmet, a shiny fish scale uniform, a fairy boy. He circled nearby and then dared, stopped in the water and shouted at her. Abyss observer, answer me. She asked, who are you? And he was propelled backwards, surely from the power of her voice. He said, I am your slave from the kingdom of Shalem. What? She whispered. He said in a peculiar sing-song, our ancestors escaped from the destruction and demolition, from the oppressor's conquest and the false prophets, from the abuse of the stranger, the widow, and the orphan. The meaning of the recitation was beyond her. Eye of observance, he added, mercy of merciful, knower of hidden. What do you want? She whispered. To row upon the earth, he said, to view the lost homelands. She retreated from the crack and covered it with her hand. End quote. The segment is full of biblical and Talmudic references to the benevolence and of divinity and the requirements for humanitarian kindness according to Judaic tradition. Now, at this point, the reader realizes that the little girl is witnessing the suffering of the people across the border, and her empathy towards the submarine stranger is her empathy towards the people she sees probably on the news. Now, the gap between the Judaic requirements for empathy towards the other and the horrors of war is explored through the crack in the wall. And the text suggests there is a gap, a crack between the requirements for empathy and war. Now, later this evening, over dinner, the little girl's mother asks her why is she crying, and after some cajoling, the girl tells her about the crack. And the next day, when the girl returns from school, she finds that the crack had been sealed. The girl lashes out and is scolded for not reporting the crack earlier, as there might have been some, quote, structural damage. She cries and asks about the people in the crack, and her mother tells her to stop. And then the girl restrains herself. She later eavesdrops and hears her mother saying to her father, quote, she's right. There is no sane way to deal with what's happened. And her father saying that these imaginings are borrowed from the book her uncle gave her and they should be happy that she's finally reading. And then her mother says, maybe this is not the right book. And the story ends with her father saying, quote, at the right age, our lives have narrowed to a children's story, heroes and villains, raw emotions, transparent metaphors waiting for adulthood to extract the complexity of being from them, end quote. And her mother sighs. And so the story offers a succinct and powerful observation about the significance of literature, including in particularly children's literature and speculative fiction, for the continuation of normal life, as well as a poignant comment about recent reductionist discourses that are prevalent not only on social media, but all over mainstream journalism. Yet this leads one to a disturbing conclusion, as surely sealing the crack, which is a spatial metaphor for the glimpse into the world of the other, is not the solution. In fact, one might consider opening a wide, gaping chasm and looking deep into the abyss in order to make sure that the abyss stares back and offers us a good idea of what monsters lurk in the darkness. Because if we avert our gaze from the horror, we might only be plastering over the crack, ignoring some profound structural damage that Israeli society might have sustained. So, what do we do? One possible path is to try and mend the fissures, not cover, but mend the fissures. And this is proposed in Israeli kintsugi by Or Menaged. So, kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken objects by accentuating the cracks with gold instead of hiding them. But the philosophy behind it goes much deeper than a simple artistic practice. It has to do with the symbolism of healing and resilience. As Celine Santini explains, quote, first taken care of and then honored, the broken object accepts its past and paradoxically becomes more robust, more beautiful, and more precious than before it was broken. And the metaphor can provide insight into the stages of healing, whether the ailment is physical or emotional. Yet in Israeli kintsugi, Menaged suggests that whoever mends our vase use a different material. Perhaps a burgundy-colored material would be appropriate, considering everything that's happened, perhaps turquoise. And then he says, I've always liked turquoise. So the text itself, I don't know if you can see, we can look at this later, is broken and commences with the words, I hope. The words I hope are repeated 6 times and function as a subtle reference to the national anthem, the hope, Hatikva. And the vase is a metaphor for Israeli society. And the speaker says that he hopes that whoever reassembles our vase does a better job next time, because whoever did it the first time did a sloppy job, he says. He says that he hopes that, quote, we will not break as easily as the last time and the time before. Perhaps this time there will be more parts that comprise the whole, more parts that did not push in there forcefully. Perhaps this time the vase would be more pleasant to touch. It's okay that there are bumps here and there, rugged connections. One cannot ignore the differences and the gaps. One fissure cannot mend everything. Menaged's poem ends with the final hope that whoever reassembles us will be a mother. And there's a slight gap between the sentence and the word mother, and the end allows the reader to pause and draw a breath before the final plea for the mother. And in that brief breath, in that small gap, the crack of all the bereaved mothers become tangible. I think I am out of time. I have a few comments about, so next to Israeli kintsugi is kintsugi by Itzik Renard, which we see, this is the image. And as noted above, the images and texts were submitted separately. So the image is not meant as an illustration of a text, rather it is a case of great minds think alike. And the fact that both Menaged and Renard turned to the art of kintsugi for inspiration suggests they were both looking for a metaphor for empowering restoration. So just a few more words. So the choice of turquoise in Renard's image echoes Menaged's reference to the color, and both are soothing colors and a reference to the blue of the Israeli flag. And the poppies in the vase are a reminder of the red south, the poppies in the northern Negev, and also Tseva Adom, code red, which is also part of the region. So the conclusion I offer at this point pertains to the ways Israeli art grapples with the fissures and tears in the Israeli social fabric. And the texts explored here use the metaphor of the fissure to consider the limits of empathy and resilience. Yet it is precisely through our insistence to continue cultural production and engagement with art that we might allow ourselves to be both empathetic and resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weiss. If you don't mind, stop sharing so we can see both of us kind of on the screen, big heads, talking heads. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it very much, and I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that the audience enjoyed it very much as well. I'm going to take advantage, first of all, of my role as kind of the conveyor of this event. I'm going to ask a question, but first, I'm going to encourage our audience members of the audience to type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. And my first question is historical almost. How are these creations different from previous historical tragic events? In other words, certainly the magnitude here is unprecedented, as both policymakers and other observers have noticed. But beyond the kind of the scope or the nature of October 7th, how is it different from other tragedies that kind of captured the attention of artists, whatever the medium is? You can choose, literature, film, whatever.
Thank you. So initially, I think the overwhelming abundance of testimonials and memoirs is one of the first things that we see here. And I want to mention two things about that. One, just the outpour. I think the current work that I see some of my colleagues that work on Holocaust studies retrieving testimonials. I think one of the reasons that people were so anxious, I would say, to provide testimonials is because of that horrible shadow. And also, just before October 7th, Israel was really looking at 50 years to the Yom Kippur, the 1953 war. And if you look at what was sort of surfacing at that point, we see a lot of literature that and testimonials and news and documentaries that were looking at that point in time. And I think there's a very important conversation, sadly, between October 1973 and October 2023. I will also say, so in the book that, I will now plug the next book that I am co-editing, which is Israeli speculative fiction. It is forthcoming in March. And the chapter that I contributed is about the 1903 Kishinev pogrom, which again, so very shorthand about that, Chaim Nachman Bialik, the Israel national poet, was sent after the Kishinev pogrom to collect testimonies. He eventually didn't write a report. He wrote two epic poems, one in the city of slaughter, which is a call for Jews to defend themselves and leave Europe, because so that this will never happen again. And the other poem that he wrote, Al Shchita, on the slaughter, is a very fierce cautionary against revenge. Now, tragically, 120 years after, in the city of slaughter, Be'er Hariga, what we saw on October 7th is horrifyingly reminiscent of that, right? That massacre. So I think one of the things that I would see that is similar is collection of testimonies. One of the things that I think is extraordinary is the abundance. And so what we talked about, the fact that we see this in literature and cinema and documentaries and features and poetry and theater. And I think the main difference that I would see is the immediate production. I think it took some people some years to react, and in this case, I think the urgency was palpable.
All righty. There's a question in the box, but again, I'm going to take advantage. I'm going to be very, very exploitative of my role, of my domination here. And I'm going to ask a question that, for example, I asked Edgar Keret, who visited us last year, in September 24, just over a year. And Edgar Keret is very Israeli. It is very difficult to translate Edgar Keret. How do you see these artists trying to translate from the Israeliness, from the Hebrewiness, if you'd like, of their experience to perhaps readers who are not Israeli, who are outside the region? Is there any effort to kind of to communicate, to have this conversation of sorts?
Thank you. This is a fantastic question. So, on the one hand, we saw, so Eli Sharabi's memoir was almost immediately translated into English. And like I said, was almost immediately on the Times bestseller list and on the 100 list as well. So on the one hand, there is this immediate translation of the work. On the other hand, so one of the texts that I briefly mentioned, Herzberg, which is a novel, is really, so if I say that it's funny, it would be, I think, it might sound bizarre for people who don't really, because this dark sense of humor that is very Israeli and is very much a part of Israeli way of coping with the surreal life in Israel, might come across as jarring, right? So some people who will read this text, it might not be translatable. And over the years, I found that texts like Keret, which I teach in my courses, sometimes my students are a bit taken aback by this very dark, sometimes very cynical sense of humor, which is so arguably very much Israeli. It is a coping mechanism. It is arguably a very important coping mechanism. Sometimes it is not translatable, and arguably this is part of the work that we do in the courses, mediating these texts to students and audiences more broadly.
All righty. We have a question from the audience. A few of the examples deal with trauma within the family. Are there any other contexts that people write about or wrote about, and why do you think this is so? In terms of, is there a kind of a genre within this genre of October 7th literature or creativity?
This is a really interesting question. Thank you very much. So I think one of the things that happened during October 7th is people were constantly stuck in the shelter, and so families were stuck together for long periods of time and had to deal with coping with the stress of being under rocket or missiles or drone attack, and also, just a family stuck in one room for hours. And I think that yields a very particular perspective in this context of this conflation of, yes, it is about a father and son, and yes, it is about post-traumatic disorder. And so we do see that in several texts. I think it also, so it's the family, but also in various, so some families have a safe room or mamad or shelter in their house. Some families don't. And then the entire neighborhood or the entire apartment building is together in this room. So again, in Herzberg, it starts with the first time that they ran down. He ran down with only tight red boxer shorts. And so the whole conversation in shelter wasn't about the rockets. It was like, what are you wearing? So it's about families. It's about communities. It is a very interesting, arguably, perspective about Israeli culture that is so very unique in that context. On the one hand, extraordinarily supportive. So during the October 7th attack and right after it, like I said, Israelis exhibited extraordinary resilience, and people came together and supported each other and formed these communities. So whether it is a nuclear family or communities, I think it is a unique part of Israeli society. Even in big cities, we see these communities come together.
All righty. David Siegel, who's a very good friend of the Gildenhorn Institute, a strong supporter of ours, and it's thank you so much for attending this event as well, David. And he writes, in times of conflict, it is common for art to both support and oppose the conflict. So kind of there's a contradiction there, or supposedly there is, or might be. Were there any examples of opposition to the Gaza war in Israeli art after October 7th? In other words, the saying in Hebrew, "Shamuzot ro'amot," so when the muse are thundering, there's no criticism. Everybody aligns or kind of falls into line, kind of rally around the flag. Did you notice any counter movement, any counter opposition, so to speak?
So, first of all, thank you very much. I can't see who the participants are, and I can't see, but I very much appreciate the questions. So thank you. So, arguably, the texts that I explored here are already critical of this of the war, right? When we see in Shimon Adaf's text, through this little girl's perspective, she is offering a text that is very much against the war, right? So already, and this was just just a few months right after and during the height of the conflict. So very much already hearing voices that are against the war, opposing this. And even the text that, so even the other children's story that I mentioned, which again is called "Together We Will Win." Even there, we see a subliminal subtext suggesting conflict is not the answer. So over there, right, it's two kids, and they end up right in a conflict, and they resolve their conflict through communication. So arguably already there are voices saying, explicitly and implicitly voicing their voices against the war. I think it's important to note, and so when the "Together We Will Win" slogans were all over the country, some people found it very disturbing, and there were caricatures, for example, in Haaretz newspaper, that showed the Israeli prime minister kind of like tapping a soldier on the arm, saying, "Together we will win, and then we'll see if you were in Kaplan." So Kaplan is where the protests against the judicial right were taking place, and so there were definitely very early on voices critiquing the war, critiquing this engagement in the conflict, and of course the massive protests against the war and the release of the hostages. There were numerous installations against the war and for the release of the hostages. So very early on, there were voices against the war. I think. Sorry, I think one of. Sorry, go on.
No. I think for example, the movie, the film, The Sea, Hayam, that won the Israeli Ophir Prize, kind of the equivalent of the Oscar, will represent the state of Israel in the next Oscar award season, and it is kind of telling a story of a Palestinian teenager, young kid, basically, who wants to reach the Mediterranean from Ramallah, kind of talking about kind of the conflict and talking certainly in the context of the Gaza war. Then it becomes kind of there's an elevated conversation there as well.
Yes, and so I didn't refer to the film here, but this is a good opportunity to briefly talk about it. So two things that I'd like to say about this. So first of all, it's a fantastic film, and I think it won the awards by merit. Right, there were a lot of conversations about that. I think one of the interesting scenes, and arguably one of the problematic scenes there, is so the kid tries to get to the sea, and his father, spoiler alert, right? And his father tries to find him. And then when they are eventually detected by the police and they are detained by a wall and they are being searched, right? Because of the potential threat of bombs, the scene shows Israelis in Tel Aviv sitting at a coffee shop as bystanders. So I think arguably one of the biggest issues that the Israeli Minister of Culture found with the film is this issue of Israelis not reacting. And so paradoxically, while in the film Israelis are not reacting, the film itself is a very clear and loud reaction, a cultural reaction to this ongoing situation. So I think this is important to notice.
Alrighty. One final question from the audience. Since October 7th, has there been in both Israel and elsewhere literature, film, art, etc., discussing the rising anti-Semitism and global dislike for Israel and how that contributes to this drama? In other words, this kind of reflective inside-outside, from the outside inside, or whatever you want to kind of relate the two spheres, so to speak.
So there's definitely a lot of academic discourse about this, but to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been yet a lot of artistic reactions to that. I'm sure that we will see that as well. I think that one of the interesting so there was recently an article that talked about whether or not people feel comfortable pulling out a book in Hebrew in cities all over the world, and specifically the conversation focused on whether or not Israeli literature and Hebrew literature produced outside of Israel can reflect Israeli culture. I think that's a really interesting conversation about Hebrew literature, art, and production, and Israeli art and literature, whether it is spatially defined according to the borders of Israel, and that's still negotiated as we speak, or whether it is a culture that is not necessarily spatially confined.
All righty, so we're just about to wrap things up. One final question, very briefly, if you can. Is there a common denominator to all these creations across all these domains, all these spheres, all these fields of artsy work, so to speak, on the screen, in books? Is there one thing that kind of is this, the thread that connects all of it?
So I argue that this tension between empathy and resilience, that is the common denominator. I think every documentary, every poem, the theater, the screen, literature, poetry, every media grapples with that. How do you find a balance between remaining empathetic without it being self-destructive, and at the same time not giving up whatever your principles, humanist principles might be?
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful way to finish, to wrap things up and end this conversation. I really, 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 really appreciate your comments and your insightful presentation of a snapshot, in a way, right? Just a bit of a pit.
So this is really just the tip of the cultural iceberg. There is so much production going on, and thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me to invite everyone to enter this conversation about Israeli culture.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming, speaking with us here today. I want to thank the audience. Just a reminder, our next event on December 9th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, a book talk, Collapse, Israeli Labor Party 1992-2024, featuring Dr. Ori Vertman. More information and to register, www.israelstudies.umd.edu. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay warm, drive carefully. If it's raining, it is raining around here. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weiss.